What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Bitcoin today. The purpose of this video is to try and accurately predict what this next move out is going to look like. What's the next move going to look like? How big is it going to be? How fast is it going to be? Where and when is it going to end? All those questions and more. And if you're wondering right now, if the question that you have right now is, what do you mean by this next move? I mean simply this, right? We had a move here that went into this consolidation phase. We had a move here that went into this small consolidation phase, right? But it was still a move up. What's the move out of the consolidation phase going to look like? That's the question I want to answer. If that sounds good to you, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's get into it, my friends. So I think first and foremost, the best way, the kind of most obvious way to answer this question of what's the next move going to look like, I think if, using technical analysis, would be to measure what the previous moves have looked like, right? From a relative low here to this relative high before you started to consolidate there, that was about a 44% move. Okay, cool. We take this relative low here to, I would say, this relative high. That's probably when you really started to consolidate. Your overall move was 58% there, yeah? You had that last little push up. I would consider that the overall move, right? It's like you didn't consolidate here. You consolidated the next week after you had that final push up. So I'm going to do it this way. Okay, so this is your first move. This is your second move. We'll just kind of put them left to right in that order. Okay, first move there, second move there, third move kind of. Yeah, I mean that's a move. Let's be fair. That's a move. 27%. Yeah. Fourth move or third move there. Okay, fourth move. You were consolidating still here. I would say this move didn't start until here. And really, you moved all the way up to about 65%. Okay, so the biggest move we've seen so far, seeming to get a little bit bigger as we go through. Here, from a low to a high, I would say that is the overall move. So that's the biggest move that we've seen so far. And then I'm not going to count anything that's really in this consolidation phase. I don't want to measure that, right? I guess we counted this one. Maybe we'll just throw that one out. Okay, we'll throw that one out because that is in the consolidation phase. I want to get the moves that are taking you away from consolidation phases, not parts of the consolidation phase. So here, again, this overall move, from a low to a high, one could argue that it started here, and then it ended here. One could argue that, or I'm gonna step on a limb here and identify the move as like starting here at the low point and then actually ending about here, because I think that this past 4 weeks has really been consolidation. It's not this move. This move was 1, 2, 3 weeks long and then it stopped. Then we started consolidating. So I'm gonna measure from there. That's about 50%. Okay. So we've got some nice little metrics to go off of, or nice little numbers to kind of reference here, right? 45% at the minimum, 91.7% at the maximum, right? And you can absolutely keep growing from there because, from this low here to this high, that's what I measured there for the 65.83 right there. But you still had a high in that consolidation range that went higher, and you started from lower prices, right? Depending on how you want to calculate this, that move is 65.83%, but someone could argue that it's 80.7%, and that would be a fair argument to make, I suppose. But here, being in this consolidation phase right now, if we were to measure it the same way, if we were to start to break out this week, then I suppose we could measure from this bottom here, going from the minimum target that we've seen so far throughout Bitcoin cycle was 45%. Okay, so that's kind of the minimum expected target, 44.88, 44.98. I think that's close enough. So the minimum expected target, my friends, would be at 132K by the end of this move. Now, when is this move going to end? I don't know. It's the first week of January. We're on the third day right now of January. The last move that brought us up to this consolidation phase that we're in now, it only took 3 weeks. Right? The last move we saw was 49.5%. It only took 3 weeks. And that's on the lower end of things. And by the way, the lowest end, which was not the 40, that wasn't the move that we just saw. It was this move back here from the very beginning of the cycle, arguably and definably the weakest move that we had. And in an expansive sense, 45% would put us at 132K. So that's the minimum target. Let's put a white line there. The maximum target, 92%. And I say target, let's just say expected growth of this move, 92%. 175K. And that, my friends, that is an interesting number. I think that's a very interesting number to consider. And there's more things at play here than just these little percentages. But that, I think, is a very appropriate range right there. 132K to 175K. That is essentially saying that when we break out of this consolidation phase, Bitcoin would either top off here and start its next consolidation phase, or it would top off here and start its next consolidation phase, or anywhere and everywhere in between. somewhere between 132 to 175K. Now, when is this move going to happen? That's a whole different question, isn't it? Let's do the when now. Okay, so the move started here, and it ended, I would say, probably you ended here, or maybe that actual high there, you started to consolidate. So 4 weeks. That one took 4 weeks. Okay. This move here, going from where I started it to where I would end it, that took about 7 weeks. Okay. 4 weeks, 7 weeks. I'll try and put them with their corresponding moves too, right? So it makes a little bit of sense. 4 weeks. Oh wait. Oh, oops. I didn't measure the right one, did I? I was supposed to measure this one. My bad. Low to high here. That one took 2 weeks, or maybe is that the overall move? Would that be? I think that's where I measured the move at first. Yeah, 5 weeks. My bad. So 5 weeks. This one would be 7 weeks over here. Okay, that was the 7-week one. From a low here to a high there, that took 7 weeks as well. Perfect. 7 weeks. 7 weeks. And then our most recent move here, depending on where you want to draw it starting from, I would say it started on this week here at the low, and I would say it ended there. That was about 2 weeks as well. You know, one could argue that it was 6 weeks growing overall, but I'm going to say 2 weeks there, whatever. So, or, I mean, but really 3 weeks, because if you include the beginning week, 3 weeks. So really probably add one to all of these because it doesn't include the beginning week, right? So, or maybe we don't have to add one. We'll just think weeks out, okay? This says 2 weeks, but it was overall 3 weeks. This says 7 weeks. It was overall 8 weeks. But from the originating point, it was 7 weeks out. It was 2 weeks out. So essentially anything from 2 to 7 weeks is what we could expect in a waiting time. Let's put that in perspective here. 2 weeks. So this is this week here. 2 weeks would be there. 7 weeks. That's 2 weeks. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 weeks. So that's our box. That's our little, you know, like if we were to have a target, that's it. The magic white box on our black background here. This is the target area. And with not just prices, but with our time frame as well. This says that by the 13th of January, the week of the 13th of January, we would likely be around 132K. So maybe not by the 13th specifically, but by the end of that week, which would then be the 20th, I think, or maybe the 19th. Time math is weird. Let's just see. It would be the 19th, technically, right? 13 plus 7 is 20. But for time, you include the 13th, so it'd actually be 13, and then you add 6 to it to make sense. Anyways, time math is weird. That's all I'm trying to say. So it could be by the 20th, then, is what this line would say, that we're at 132K. At a minimum. And it could take until the 17th of February at a maximum that we would be at 132K. Okay, so somewhere in that time frame. Personally, I don't know about you guys, but a move like this, I would not expect to take 7 weeks. That's not my expectation personally. Why is that not my expectation? Because the moves that took 7 weeks, if we look here, those were the moves that were at the higher end of the range that we're going for, right? Anything that was less than 60% throughout this whole cycle, which has been every move except for 2, those were the 5 weeks, 4 weeks, or 2 weeks moves, right? The 7 weeks moves, the ones that took longer, those moved up larger percentages, 66% to 91%, which that's fine, okay? But then that would imply that we have a higher target than this line, right? If we were, in other words, if we were to stop, if this move were to continue until this vertical line, likely, right, if our top happened 7 weeks from now, like we've seen the longest move take throughout these expansive phases in the cycle, if it happens 7 weeks from now, likely we would be above this line by that time, right? We'd probably see a 60% move or higher by that time. So actually on that metric alone, 60% move from the low, I mean, if we top and it's 7 weeks from now and it's the middle of February, end of February that we top, because February's only got 28 days, so maybe that would be the end of February there, then that would imply that Bitcoin by the end of February would be at 147K. By the end of January, potentially at 130K, but by the end of February, 146K. And that's just the minimum, right? That's just the minimum expectation for that 7th week. Because again, those 7-week time frames, they get larger than 60% growths. So likely by the end of February, we're above 146K is all that means. By the end of January, again, because all these moves here, 44%, 58%, 49%, all those moves happened in 2 weeks, 5 weeks, or somewhere in between. From the current day or the current week that we're in now, 2 weeks out would be here, 13th of January. 5 weeks out would be in the very first week of February. So if it's not by the end of January, it would be by the very first week of February. At a minimum, you'd be at 132K. But likely you'll be higher. And here's what I think is really interesting. Okay, I'm going to leave up all these lines, and I want you to identify which ones are respected by these fibs here. Okay, so we're going to take the all-time high from last cycle at 69K, November 21st, down to the cycle low on November 2022. November 2021 high, November 2022 low, and you can see that the high end, this white line, our projected range, which had nothing to do with these fibs here, right? I move this around, and you can see this orange line, it's moving around. I put that right at the all-time high, and that orange line just so happens to line up exactly, specifically with our white line here. The 1414 lines up with this white line here. So just time out. Okay, these white lines, again, what do the fibs mean? Okay, we'll get to that in a second, but what do these white lines mean? The white lines, again, we got those. We established all those by measuring what kind of moves we've seen for Bitcoin this whole cycle, how far they went, how long they took to get there. The vertical lines that are like this, those are the how long lines. The horizontal lines like this are the how far lines, right? So the box we have is kind of the expected zone. Let's call it the expected zone. Well, there's another expected zone that exists out in the world, right? And that is the Fibonacci extended primary zone, right? I call it the expected zone, but I've actually rebranded it to the primary zone. Okay, so from a cycle high to a cycle low, the primary zone is this 1618 to 1272 area, and you can't really see the 1414 or the 1618 because they're lining up perfectly with these expected zones off of what we would see from the movements that we've seen so far for Bitcoin. Now, here's the thing. Okay, so here's what's really cool, and this is what I wanted to say all video. So this is what I kind of wanted to start the video with, but I wanted to integrate it in the proper time, and it took this long for us to get here. This is what I think is really cool. Okay, so I'm gonna delete everything. It's obvious. We've gone through, we did all the math. You can rewind it if you need to, but 132K to 175K makes sense, not because of some pie in the sky dream that I have or that you have. It makes sense off of what Bitcoin has done this whole cycle, off of every movement. The minimum movement that it could make at all would be above 130K by the end of this move, and the longest that would take is by the end of February. But likely, if it takes 7 weeks, if it takes longer than 4 weeks, likely you're going to see a larger target, right? Which would then imply, if you're going to see a target that's larger, then probably by the end of January you are up here, and then you're going into February going to that larger target. So I would say it's a very safe bet, guys. By the end of January, Bitcoin will be above 130K, and I think it'll close above 130K. Okay, that's like genuinely, that's kind of my expectation at the moment. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, here's what I thought was really cool. So now that we've got all that, I'm gonna delete all this. Okay, we don't need it. You want it? Go back, rewind it. Go ahead, hit that like button. By the way, guys, subscribe if you're having fun. I'm having fun. But here's what's really cool to me. If you've been watching my channel, you know that I like the fibs, the Fibonacci retracement tool, and the extensions. They are the bread and butter to my analysis day in and day out. It's what I've kind of built my fundamentals of technicals on, okay? It's revolvent around the fibs. So I know a little bit about the fibs is all I'm trying to say with that little warm up there. Okay, from a cycle high to cycle low, first off, you can expect that these extended areas, which this is the primary target zone, that it's going to be respected, okay? And it's no mistake at all that, first off, what you did was you broke above the 886. Anytime you break above the 886, you can expect to see the primary target zone. But what you did was you consolidated right above the 886, which is very bullish thing. So no mistake that you went all the way up to your 1272. The first target, it's the primary target in the primary target zone. And generally what happens here is when you hit the 1272, you pull back to your 100 to 886 area, okay? Generally, that's what happens. That happens less so. It's less likely to happen if you consolidate at the 886 beforehand, which we did. So likely we're not going to do this, okay? It's very likely that you hit the 1618, that you go to the 1618 when you consolidate, whenever you hit the 1272, instead of pulling back to this area to consolidate, you consolidate just below it or just above it. That's one of the most bullish things in this fib extension. And again, I've been doing this for a little bit of time now, so this is just based on my own experience. You're not going to find this on Google. No one's going to tell you this thing that I'm about to tell you. You can't find it anywhere. You can only find it here, and that's why you hit the like button and you subscribe, is that this behavior does not suggest that we will stop here. It does not. Which, by the way, if you guys remember, that was our minimum target, right? That's our minimum target based off of the smallest moves we've seen throughout this whole bull cycle. We're without knowing any of that, I could just look at this fib and tell you this is a very bullish phase of consolidation. And statistically speaking, when you break out from here, when you get above the 1272, you're not going to stop at the 1414. Statistically speaking, you will not stop there. You're on a non-stop mission all the way up to the 1618. And we saw that a move like that is not only possible, but it's happened this cycle already. It was at the maximum ends of our range. But I have another theory for you, okay? And before we continue with this, I want to go on this tangent real quick. We'll come back to what I'm saying here. But maybe we see stronger moves. Maybe we haven't even seen the strongest move yet for the cycle. And here's my justification in that. All right, you ready for it? Here we go. You look at the very first Bitcoin cycle. Actually, we can't because that doesn't have a Bitcoin halving. So we're not going to compare the first cycle. That one we're going to look past that one, okay? This was our first Bitcoin cycle, okay? Here, November 28th, 2012, first Bitcoin halving. July 2016 was the next. July 9th was the next halving. May 11th, 2020 was the next halving, okay? This was your low, bear cycle low. The high before your halving was here. That was your pre-halving move. After your halving, this was your post-halving move. Which side of this line saw the bigger moves? Was it the pre-halving area or the post-halving area, right? It's the same thing every single cycle, I promise you. Pre-halving move here, here's your high. Pre-halving move, low to high. Just drawing that line right there. Post-halving move, low to high. It's obvious, I think, which time, again, before or after this line, which one had the bigger moves, okay? Again, here, pre-halving high, that's your move. I'm not going to measure from the low, but we're going to go post-halving from the post-halving low to the post-halving high. Even here, on this weak-ass cycle, last cycle, which one had the bigger phase? Which one was the bigger move up? It was the post-halving move, right? Here, that was a pretty big candle for a pre-halving move, 62%, right? I don't think we actually saw anything that was bigger than 62% on an open to close basis, but from a low to a high, you did see an 80% move here. So it's a little bit bigger than 60%. So you still did see the biggest moves post-halving, and not only that, but the biggest move consistently nonstop was post-halving, right? So it's happened every single cycle. My theory, going back to now that we've hit that detour, coming back to here, is that if this 173 target is the maximum target that we've got, not based off the fibs, but based off of what we've seen, the maximum growth that we've seen so far this cycle, I offer you the question, right? Because our halving this time around was April 20th, right? This year. So we had our pre-halving move, and this is the beginning of our post-halving move. Could we see stronger movements here? Could we see something bigger than anything that we had seen before? Which most of these assumptions that we're making, most of these, let's call them templates, these tracings of moves that we've had throughout the cycle, all but one came before the halving, right? So really the most bullish phase of the market has only just begun. Likely, I would say very likely, with a strong degree of certainty, whenever we break out of this move, we're not going to see the minimum target hit. No. The maximum target, as defined by the potential that we've seen so far this cycle, would be up here. But that's not even the max. My theory is that we have bigger moves to come, right? We've just seen that. We've got bigger moves to come through the rest of this cycle. Is it possible that this move, maybe it's not the biggest move we've seen so far this cycle, but that it would be a bigger move, if not potentially the biggest move that we've seen this cycle? If it's not, you hear what I'm saying? If it's not the biggest move, which it could very well be, this next move out, the whole point of this video is what's this next move going to look like? And it's going to be the biggest move we've seen this cycle so far, or it's going to be one of the bigger moves we've seen this cycle so far. Either of those answers suggest that Bitcoin doesn't stop at 128K. It suggests that it doesn't stop at 140K. It suggests likely you guys were going to be above 150K by the end of February. Likely, and I would even say with a very strong degree of certainty, likely will be at 170K. And that's all I got, man. That's it, right? That's all of it in in a bag with a nice little bow. High to low here. Your next targets would be the 2272 to the 2618. But if you look, right, generally in strong moves, okay, in any moves, I always call, and especially this kind of movement here, I would think the 2272 to the 2618 is your next area. You broke above your 1618 here, your golden ratio, you broke above it, found support on it. This would be your next zone, no questions asked, okay? But again, what you're doing with this fib is very bullish, okay? Consolidating right below your 1272, not pulling back here, very bullish. Consolidating above your 886 before you interacted with this zone, very bullish. You got two bullish things culminating together, okay? And then what we do is we look at this high to low here. You've got another bullish thing going on, which is that you tore all the way up through this primary expected zone. You tore through it, and you found support on the 1618. Generally, with moves like this, you don't stop until you at least you don't stop until this 2618. This is your next zone. The 2272 to the 2618 is your next zone. But with this kind of behavior, the expectation generally would be the 2618. And I'm not just making this up. This is what I've seen. This is what I've experienced throughout my time of trading. And if you even compare this move to that potential move there, is that not basically the exact same move that brought us into this consolidation here? So that's not much to ask for. And I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to say is this is a very bullish thing on this fib. You've got bullish things that you're doing across multiple fibs. And on this fib, the minimum target is 143K. With very bullish conditions like this, it's completely possible. I've made this line the green line because it's the money line. This is normally like the top, but this cycle I've actually identified the 3113. I should probably make this zone the green zone, man. I really should probably change both of those to green because it's kind of a zone itself. Just like this is kind of a zone, the white zone is a zone. I need to go through and change the colors. I'm just lazy. I know what they mean, but I need to make them more obvious for other people. But genuinely, what I'm getting at is the minimum target based off this fib would be the 2618, but it's completely acceptable to consider the 2886 to the 3113, which the 3113, a very common target to hit actually, as I've discovered this cycle, from a high to a low. And I don't know everything, man. I'm discovering things every single cycle, right? That's the way you should be. Nobody, if you find somebody that thinks they know everything and they don't need to learn, you should probably not watch them, okay? Because you won't learn either. 175K, the top of this range, literally the given top that I would give for this kind of move would be the 3113. And then based off of this move here, what we're doing, consolidating right below this 1272, there's no doubt in my mind that the given top would be 107. It's right there. You guys, Bitcoin is going, it's at 96.6K right now. It's going to be worth 173K by the end of February. And we're definitely going to be worth more than 130K by the end of January. I wish this was my January analysis video that I made yesterday, but it's not. So that's it. Hope you had a good time. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I don't know when this move is starting. All right, this is all predicated, by the way. Everything that I've said so far is predicated on the move starting this week. If it doesn't start this week, then everything gets pushed back one more week. If it doesn't start next week, which I'd be surprised if it didn't start next week or by the end of this week, I'd be surprised if this next phase didn't start between this week or next week. But if it started instead of next week, the week after, if it didn't start next week, which is January 6th, if it started the week after, which is January 13th, then everything gets pushed back 2 weeks. Everything stays the same. It just gets pushed back 2 weeks. And in which case then maybe we're at 170K, not by the end of February, but by the very beginning of March if it gets pushed back 2 weeks. If it gets pushed back 1 week, probably the end of February still, right? If it gets pushed back no weeks, if we are starting at this time, then everything's flawless and it's exactly as I've predicted. But if not, if it gets pushed back 1 week, just be aware of that. Okay, and even if it does get pushed back 1 week, that doesn't mean that it has to go to 7 weeks. We can see these moves, again, they take place anywhere from 2 weeks to 7 weeks, so it doesn't have to go all the way to the end of February. But sometime in February, Bitcoin will be worth 170K, and you heard it here, maybe not first, but I got to be one of the first. So hit the like button, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye.